So here we have a program explaining how information is stored in variables, what the variable types are, and how you declare them in the program, and how you print those out. These are some basic steps in programming. Now there are some parts of this program that won't be explained until a later time, but just know for now that your C program starts beginning the execution at a function called main, and every program must have at least one main function. So that's where you see these curved brackets here. The curly brackets show the entire span of the program. So all of that is inside here. It ends with return 0, which is something you need to put in for now. We'll explain later. Here are the variable types at the top here. And variable types are how you store data for use later in the program. An integer is a positive or negative whole number. We have an example here, age. A food price, because it will likely have a decimal point, is called a floating point number. But we have a type called double here, which just means that this floating type can have extra memory. So we could have changed this and use float instead, but we'll use double for now. And the value is 45.60 as you see here. Now for a single character, it's just char, and the character can be anything from the keyboard that's printable, so it doesn't necessarily mean a letter. It can be a number, but it's not going to be treated as a value that you can do arithmetic on, for example, okay? So just to maybe make it not so confusing, let me just use something like H. When you want to have a string or a group of letters or characters that's just going to be treated as regular text, you have to make an array of characters. More about that later, but here is the format of how you declare it. And then as you can see here, when we're printing out the message, which is a string variable that we've created here, it actually printed out the words "I am a programmer" here, as you see on the output on the right. We did run the program already, so I can run it again. You can see the results is the same. Notice that you have some percentage specifiers here. And this is actually going to be used to print the variable contents in that particular location in this message here on the screen. Meaning then that, let's say I wanted to add something here. Your age is, let me just correct that, run the program again. So you see it says here your age is 50. So the percentage D is a placeholder for where the variable is going to be printed on the screen, and in this case we use percentage D because we're printing an integer. For decimal point numbers we use percentage F, which represents floating point numbers. That's why food price has percentage F and not percentage D. For the character it's percentage C, as you see, and for the string percentage S. We could say total cost is, and we're just making these additions just so you can get the idea of how the format holders just put a spot for the variable to be printed in that location. Now if you notice here, we also have another character, /n, that gives a new line. If we didn't have that, all these statements would be printed on one line. So let me remove this /n here and just run the program again and show you what happens. So notice here, you would normally have had a new line after the food price was printed. Okay, so the H, or the initial character variable, got stuck to the end of the 45.00. Let's remove the top /n, which is a new line character, and run the program again for experimenting purposes. So notice everything gets smashed together on one line because there's no new line character. So if I replace the new line character, so the /n is known as an escape sequence. So notice we have it back on a new line, and if we put the /n here, we get that one character H pushed down on a separate line. You can also have the /n at the beginning or anywhere in the middle here. So if I wanted to break this up, for example, let's say I wanted to have the word total be on a separate line, I could put a /n there and see the word total is on a separate line. Of course that's not what we really want, but that's just a demonstration there. So let me remove that. And if you wanted to, you could have it at the beginning. So let me actually put two new line characters there to show that it will create two blank spaces right after, or right before, sorry, the total cost is printed. So another example of what you could do there. So let me undo that. Alright, so the best way to master this is really by practicing how these different characters are printed, how they look, how they appear, and it will mean that you have an idea of just how to get your formatting of your messages looking the way you want it to. It's good to first probably start practicing with just one of them. So for example, you could just practice with the integers and just get used to printing that here is an integer printing calculation, even though it's not a variable. So I got the answer 25 here, but if I wanted to print, say, 5.0, even though it's the same value, but because I have a decimal point on it, it's really a floating point number now. Alright, we get an error here because it's not, the format specifier is %d, which is for integer. We should use %f for floating point. So even though it's the same answer that we get in terms of value, but just having a decimal point, even if it's a 0 after, makes a difference. Okay, and now we see you get the answer 25. So this is just an example showing you how the format specifiers are critical for you getting the correct output when you want something displayed.